Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on the future of fare collection technology. We're here to explore how agencies are modernizing their systems, the challenges they face, and what the future may hold. I'm Alex Stroman, Executive Editor of Metro Magazine, and I'm delighted to be joined by subject matter expert in transit hardware, Fernando Herkenhoff, North American Sales Director for HID, and Matthew Hudson, Director at Rebel Group, an independent technology consultant with deep experience in assisting transit agencies specify the right ticketing systems. We're going to keep things not necessarily loose, but we're gonna have just a nice conversation, kind of Q&A style. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat, and we'll address those when we're able to. For now, I'd like to welcome Fernando and to kick us off.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming here. It's a pleasure. I'm Fernando. I'm a sales director. I specialize on mass transit ticket solutions for the Americas. Just before I pass to Matt, let me explain a little bit about HID. We are all about powering trusted identities. So on that sense, we're mainly known by our physical access control division, but we have also 4 other different areas of approach. To allow a person to access something or someplace, we can create a unique ID value and associate that ID value to a person. We can then also create an identity holder, call a card or a token or a credential. Then we can also customize that credential, for example, by printing the card, by printing the name of the company or the person, a name or account name or something like that. Then we can, on the software part, we can add the security, we can create a mobile credential, and we can manage the identity life cycle. For example, someone coming to a building as a visitor, we can select and manage where it can be accessed, what doors can open, and when the person leaves, and that identity at the end of the visit, or an employee when it starts or finish their employment. Finally, to be able to integrate all of this, we also have different divisions that offer technologies, hardware technology, that will read those identities. Those are biometric readers, face, iris, and fingerprint, and palm, as well. And in that same area, we have tickets and document readers, which are used in the airports and mass transit, for example, to read a passport or a transit ticket, allowing use different technologies like MyFare, Calypso, QR, and EMV cards. I'll now pass to Matt.
Hello, everybody. Still find it slightly weird I can't see everyone out there, but I'm assured that you're out there. So I'm Matthew Hudson. I'm working for the Rebel Group. So a little bit about Rebel. I think we're described as a boutique consultancy, about 200 of us. We're based in Rotterdam, but we've got offices around the world, in Europe, in Africa, in Asia, and in the US market. We're in North American market, Toronto, Washington, and San Francisco. And in fare collection, we advise both clients, so agencies, but also we do work with the private sector as well. We think it's very important to understand both sides and bring our insight. And at the moment, we're working on a number of procurements, both in North America and around the world. A little bit about myself. I've been at Rebel for 4 years. Prior to that, I spent 20 years at Transport for London, so a lot of deep experience. I'm afraid I am probably described as a bit of a nerd when it comes to all things about smart ticketing and get quite excited about it. So delighted to be here to share some tales and insights with you today.
Great. So we're going to move on here, and I'm glad we got some nerds to talk about this topic. I think it's really going to be great for our audience. Topics for discussion today, we have an overview of the latest research, current status of ticketing hardware, upgrade drivers, transitioning from legacy to digital ticketing, priorities and challenges approaching an upgrade, and the future for fare collection hardware. So we should have a great conversation. Fernando, I'm going to have you talk a little bit about HID just conducted a study. Can you talk a little bit about that study as kind of the jumping off point for today's discussion?
Yeah, sure. So we beginning of the year, we did a survey with about 102 transit ticketing professionals that responded to it. There was a very diverse mix of organizations. You can see on the map the dots where most of the responses came from, mostly came from the Americas. And there was a wide range of expertise, people from agencies and from consulting, and also from hardware, from manufacturing suppliers. Can we go to the next one? I think, so I can explain this one too, just to have everybody situated on. This is the first question that was on the survey about the current ticketing hardware status. As you can see, different blocks: North America, Latin America, Asia Pacific, Europe, and Middle East. The way we read those answers is this big block. When you see first one, North America, 46%, 46 answers, it's not excluded. So people that answer that they use the Farebox Cash, they might also be using app-based or open loop and so on. What was interesting to see here is obviously a very dominance of Farebox and caches in North America, followed by app-based and not too far away from closed-loop cards. Europe shows a different trend where app-based mobile ticketing is the dominant, followed closely by the barcodes, and then by TVMs, which it's actually together. The TVMs and barcodes works together, because if you buy it, then you have to print something to prove, and then most of the time is barcode. So predominance, and a very large number of EMV, open loop cards in Europe. Asia, Latin America and Asia are very similar. They're closed loop dominance, followed by open loop and Fareboxes, and Middle East is mainly closed loop. So that's just set a little bit of the understanding about the survey, right?
Yeah, and I think, this obviously, I think people, agencies were pivoting to different types of fare collection during COVID and that sort of thing. But this has been around, and this transition has been starting to take place even before then. Can you talk a little bit about some of the operational or reputational risks agencies face if they delay upgrading their fare collection technology?
Sure. Matt, do you want to take this first?
Yes, I can do. Yeah, sorry, I was trying to find my mute button on the new system. So I've got a bit of sympathy with agencies in that the simple answer is always to say, we should upgrade and make sure our systems are, best in class, etc. But we are financially constrained, many agencies out there. So it is a difficult question and not easy just to say we should always upgrade as quickly as possible. I mean, my only observation, I think, is the broader context of, I'm so sorry, I can hear some typing, which is quite loud. I don't know.
That's me, sorry.
No, I think we're seeing, we'll come on to EMV open loop, is really taking traction around the world. And therefore, some agencies, you do start to suffer if you're being left behind, particularly tourist locations where people now are expecting EMV. And we don't want to sort of disappoint expectations or disappoint certainly people who will be using our systems but choose not to because they can't use their bank card or their mobile wallet because they expect it. And I think the other thing just to reflect on is the broader trends in society. What are we doing about cash? And what do we do about people who still use cash? And I think we might come on to that subject later, but those issues about how do we both upgrade and keep with people's expectations and make sure we have a compelling offer to customers, but also recognizing we're constraining budgets and we serve, all of our members of our community and can create some tensions there. So it's sort of a bit of both sides, I think, for the moment.
Yeah, Fernando, do you have more to add to that?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And not only the risk of not attracting new riders, because the new generations, they're all using their phones to do everything. Everybody's getting used to tap the cards and everywhere. Tap, especially in the US, is replacing the swipe and go. So now it's tap and go. Europe has been in that trend for longer. So it's not just the obsolescence, but also the security. I think in parts of the world, Latin America, for example, there is always the issue of the security of having cash in the bus that obviously attract bad actors. So that could also be in consideration.
Great. Sorry, I apologize for my tappity tap. I know how annoying that is to hear someone typing. It's first time for everything. Beyond the obvious expenses, what hidden costs do inefficient fare collection systems create for agencies?
I can start that. So my consideration is the obvious expenses is not collecting the fare or the fare evasion. So on more on the hidden expenses, I would mention a few of them, like boarding time. If you have a better system that you can expedite boarding time, you will save in fuel, less emissions, less efficient timetables, because now you have to predict all this stopping time. The need of the driver's attention as well. When you have big fare boxes with cash inside, eventually the drivers will take some of their attention to it. There is the cost of repairs of those obsolescence systems that cost even more nowadays. There is also real estate. Every bus has a little piece, and having bulky and big hardware there, it takes a little piece of that real estate. Not having a flexible hardware, it reduces the possibility to adapt to new fare collection programs like price change, peak price, fare capping, those good stuff, and not being able to collect useful user data. It's also important. Finally, I think dependence on third-party proprietary technology also plays a good hidden risks or hidden expenses.
So I'll chip in there. I mean, I think what's interesting, your comment on boarding time, I think is it's what's the proposition to our customers out there. And, when people are paying by cash on a bus, we all know as operators that takes a long time. We have people queuing and waiting, and wherever you are in the world of retail or commerce, having our customers queue and wait is not a good thing. We have solutions for getting people to buy tickets in advance, etc. But that issue of boarding time, I think, is an important one. And I think the other thing that I see, with this sort of hidden cost, again, it's those missed opportunities. We've looked at some data around the world, and we see an uplift in ridership when it's easy to pay. And if I will digress slightly when I tell a London tale. London's a fantastic system anyway. We've already got a closed loop card that was doing very well. When I worked in London, we introduced EMV. We calculated it added about 2% to our ridership, right? And 2% is a good number that we go after in public transport. So I think thinking that through and really making the proposition to customers, and again to those new customers, people who sit there and go, you know what, it's just so easy to jump on the bus and tap a card. I don't have to buy a ticket. I don't know what ticket I need to buy. I just want to jump on the bus because someone says it's quicker. If we can grab those customers by the proposition being really easy and no barriers, no fear factor, just really simple, then I think we're onto something. And that ability to capture new passengers, we all know that's the secret. More money coming in just helps us because our cost base certainly isn't going to change much.
Yeah, it's being convenient, right?
Right. And and that's really one of the first few steps that I think agencies are taking in making transit simpler, right? I mean, the real-time planning, so when the buses are, or when the rail is going to be there and when it's not going to be there. And then, the ease of being able to show up and jump on that vehicle to start moving and get on with their commute. As agencies kind of adopt EMV, why is it equally important to support barcode and mobile ticketing, and how these two kind of complement each other?
I'll go first. I think the report shows, we'll switch to the next one. I think the report shows the importance of having multiple ticketing solutions. It allows people just to pay whenever they like to pay and wherever they can pay. If everything is to a single solution, it makes it harder, less convenient, as Matt just said.
Yeah, I mean, I would be a bit more sort of hard and commercial here. If you're going through an investment, you try and invest, once and cover all the bases. And, what I see now is that most suppliers are supplying readers that can read EMV, another NFC, as well as barcode, all in one unit. The price difference isn't that much if you end up saying, I don't want one element or the other, and we all know, again, it's the cost of putting these units in, getting the buses out to put that in, put the new wiring in, whatever. That's your cost. So if you're going to go for that one investment, my advice is always cover the bases off. Accept EMV, but accept barcode. And even if you're not using barcode right now, you might use barcode. Equally, you might go, I don't think EMV is the answer. Well, you might not, but you might as well put the system in, okay? Because often that investment is worthwhile, because the real cost is that physical, buy the reader, install the reader, et cetera, et cetera. And what I'm seeing around the world is, I do tend to see EMV and barcode are the two products that it's not that one will beat the other. I think both are going to be complementary. One is still about selling a ticket, and sometimes it is important to sell a ticket, sell it in advance, make someone commit, or get the best deal. And a ticket is great. EMV and closed loop cards are great for I just want to jump on a bus and get to work, or go to the shops, or go to the theatre, and that ability just to have the convenience of just tapping and traveling. So again, I think both are important. And again, from an investment point, get all your bases covered in that one investment.
And am I correct or incorrect that barcode could be beneficial for special events? Being able to sell kind of one-off ticket solutions for a concert or a sporting event.
Absolutely, yeah.
Great.
So yeah, I'll say yes. I'll say yes. And again, but I think we've got to also just get used to how customers operate. So it's not necessarily you need a single ticket that both gets you into the the Rams game, as well as getting you on the LA Metro, as well as getting you I don't need necessarily one ticket, but I can understand that, okay, I've got a wallet, I've got lots, here's my free ticket to get to travel on the subway system, here's my ticket for getting to the event. It can feel consistent to a customer. And I think there is an advantage there of just accepting that many other retail solutions now rely on QR code. It's going to become more natural and expected. So I always say that I think that is the stronger argument. And I sometimes see we have these sort of mental challenges. If we could just have one ticket that would cover all these aspects. Well, we probably could, but it might take us a long time to build it, design it, commercially sign up to it, get all the pieces in place. I think the real thing is just people getting used to going, here's my wallet. Okay, here's my travel. Here's my free food voucher. Here's entrance to the event, and here's an after event discount. Those are things that are really going to sort of help come together as people are like, okay, transit and public transit is just one element of all this package of things I've got. If I want to use it, I can use it. That's fantastic.
Right. Great. Fernando, do you want to talk a little bit about this slide we're looking at now?
Contactless to mobile ticketing. So the people during the survey, a lot of people mentioned their intention to upgrade their systems in the next 12 to 24 months, which is an indication of all those changes coming together. Obviously, COVID had a mark on everyone, reducing the touch points. I think that's part of it as a result of that too. Okay,
and Matthew, I'm sorry, did you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to chip in. I mean, I I was just looking over some things before I came on this call from Mobility Payments, and those in the industry will know this as an online magazine. I mean, you look down some of the examples here of what's happening, and EMV open loop is just coming more and more. We look at the graphs around the world, and what we tend to see is everyone is going in that direction, and we've had lots of tales of sort of board members return from a trip to insert city here, could be New York, could be London, and they come back and go, this is fantastic. I didn't have to do anything and it was brilliant. Why aren't we doing that? And I think that is what's going to keep coming, is that sort of build up of pressure to say, look, this is the way to do it. This is the chance to move on to these new systems, because it's where the industry is going. And in the end, it will be expected. I mean, that's the reality of what's going to be coming out.
Yeah, and on that topic, I mean, what's kind of driving the adoption of contactless payment? Is it convenience? Is it cost savings, passenger expectations, or something else?
I think it's both what you said, is convenience, but also about security. Again, reducing money in the buses. Although, if you're talking about closed loop as well, you're also reducing the cash in the buses. But convenience, I think, is the primary, when people just tap their card like they're buying a coffee or buying anything else, and just tap and go on the public system.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I'd add that, again, if we add another payment channel to our offer, so let's say if you're accepting cash at the moment and you add, I'll still accept cash and I'll accept another payment channel, you are adding cost to your cost base, and sometimes we mustn't forget that. But I do think that the driver is that I think in the long term, EMV Open Loop does give you the chance to move to not accepting cash. Getting it in place and seeing the usability of it and getting your customers used to using it and seeing where the volumes are. I think Fernando's commented, the data and understanding your customers, it puts you on the right path, because there's no doubt that collecting cash is expensive and it has risks for the driver. And again, I think we've made those points out. So there again, we're in the transit game. It's a long-term game, so really some of this investment is around recognizing that, will we always accept cash? I'm rather hoping we won't at some point, but to get on that path now, I think is an important aspect. And I think that's a lot of the driver is sort of get onto the channel now and see where it takes us. Let's not be left behind.
Yeah. And I mean, you raise an interesting point, Matt. I think you're talking about also increased safety, right? You're eliminating possibly the interaction between a driver and a person who doesn't have cash to get on the bus or anything like that. There's a scuffle over money. I think you're eliminating that factor, correct? To some extent.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's there's those interactions. I think it's there's bad actors. At no point do I want to put any of my drivers under any risk of harm. Carrying cash around is not the way to do that. And I think the ability to remove it completely from your system, again, I remember tales in bus garages. I get back, I have to move cash. I've got to have 2 people to oversee it. I've got to count it in separate rooms. I've got it's a lot of cost and expense, and really to remove that, I think is a wonderful improvement, both to the operators as well as to the customers. Operators would like not to have that physical action. We know digital is an easier way forward and makes our operations easier.
Mm-hmm. And beyond contactless EMV, what other modernization trends, such as closed loop or account-based ticketing, are kind of shaping upgrade plans?
Matt,
I'll go first. I mean, I think a couple of things are driving. So for some of the bigger cities around the world, the closed loop card, so whether it be your Oyster card in London or Tap card in LA or Clipper card, they were all based on old technology. So we call it closed loop 1.0. And those that know your systems, it's where data gets written to a card and there's communication between a card and a reader to do calculations. Now that's all being replaced by the ability to sort of do everything in the back office, which is, we talk about this account-based ticketing. It's basically saying, look, communications now is so good, I don't have to do the calculation when the card hits the reader, which is what I used to do 20 years ago because comms was nowhere near as fast. But now I can just ping a quick message, I've seen Fernando's card. Is it any good? Yeah, it's great. Let him travel. And that all gets done in 200 milliseconds. I mean, 20 years ago, we'd be expecting sort of, that has to take like a day and a half. I mean, the change is unbelievable. And so what you're seeing is at one level, many of the older systems are working out, okay, look, we need to change because this new communication speed allows us to do things a lot quicker, cheaper, and better. Again, I'll go back to London. Instead of having 30,000 computers out there on every single vehicle and every single station doing calculations, I've got one machine in the back end doing it once. I mean, it's just so much more efficient. So I think we're seeing that as one driver, and that's causing the market to try and react and change and offer new products. So that's what I see from some of the big things. I think the other thing is we're seeing some of the medium and smaller operators now, they're able to buy these services. Because again, go back in our history, and it was only London and New York and the big cities who could afford, because it would be a $400 million investment to get started. I mean, okay, it's big cities and no one else. Whereas now you're getting sort of software services that literally say, hey, look, we can install these readers and charge you per month. We can do mobile ticketing, and we'll just take a chip of the fee. And that's allowing those business models that the market's creating, is allowing medium and smaller operators to say, well, hey, we can do this. We can do mobile ticketing, and now we can do EMV as well, because the similar models are coming out there. So those are the sort of two things I'm seeing that's driving some of this change.
Yeah, I agree completely. And on the ABT or account base, what you just said, Matt, I think there is also a better way to manage the prices and the concessions. It's easier to do on ABT than when it's stored in the card, right? All the fare caps, or I just mentioned that, right? The concessions, and it makes this system more equitable. And as those technologies are getting more popular, the cost of implementation getting cheaper. So it allows the smaller agencies to also go in that direction. I would also add two new technologies that we've been hearing about more recently. One is UWB, ultra wideband, that will eventually allow someone just to walk through the door of the bus, not having to tap on anything. So I think that will come to some of the discussions. And also I've seen some discussions on mobile driver's license, especially on concessions. So when you're both conceptions, and to make sure that the payments, EMV payment, are safe. While you're tapping on your mobile, you can confirm that transaction because you are identifying that person, so less frauds. And you can identify the person, for example, in a concession in a senior pass or a student pass or something like that, that the person that is using is the one there actually in the system. So those two technologies will come soon.
Interesting. Thanks for that, Fernando. Of course, moving from legacy fare boxes to digital systems isn't just about technology. It's about kind of managing change smoothly. Can you let us talk a little bit about practical steps agencies can take to transition from legacy fare boxes to digital ticketing with minimal disruption?
I think the best way is to adopt a phased approach, right? Add the digital capabilities first, educate the public, and making sure that they have the capability to use the digital solutions, and then phase out the cash. There are certain areas that will be very difficult to remove completely, but there are ways that you can use the retail third-party infrastructure to move to the digital. So you remove the cash from the bus by moving it to the retail, where the person will then recharge the card to be able to use inside of the bus or the train or the transit system, which also brings back to the account basis. When people are using cash, those unbankerized people don't have access to better fare capping, for example, for using the system, because they cannot recharge a full card all at once, but by enabling the retails to work together with the transit system, allowing people to recharge in the smaller quantities, by having that unique number, unique account, those fare caps, for example, can be applied during or throughout the month or the year or quarter or whatever. So those, I think those are things to be considered.
Yeah, Alex, I think I've got sort of two angles to this question. So the first is, I've written here, plan, but don't design. And I'm going to have to sort of really get on a soapbox here, which is, please do not go and try and design your systems. Do not sit there and say, yeah, what I want is 60,000 lines of requirement for my contract, which I'm going to go out to the market, and write reams and reams of requirements. I see it in a lot of some of the larger agencies have done this in the past, and there's a desperate sort of trying to weed them off that and say, look, try and adapt to the solutions that are out there, because writing requirements and designing this yourself, it just adds to cost. I think, the second bit I would say is just a bit of experience here, launch early with little trials. So, I mean, you could all call it an MVP, a minimum viable product, but you're trying to do little trials. And again, one thing I remember learning in London is when you set up who would like to do the trial here, and people think great, and you make sure that even your local blogger who will be there doing it, a couple of people from the local press, and make them feel special, and they start writing, hey, I've just done this amazing thing on the bus today. I've used EMV for the first time. It's unbelievable. And suddenly your marketing budget doesn't need to be as big either, because you've done these sort of small trials. And equally with a small trial, something goes wrong. It's like, hey, that's great. Thanks for feeding back. We'll go and fix that. It's part of the process of delivering. And everyone's like, this is great. You feel like you're engaging, your customers like it. It can really give a positive vibe. So really think, whenever you do these things, just think, okay, listen, could I get a small group of people to test it, who are in the general public, maybe write about it, make a comment about it, that could really help you get going and launch it from that experience of actual people using it, iron out the problems, and then launch, as you say, in phases, and off you go going forward.
Right. And getting back to the study here, Fernando, can you talk a little bit about this chart we're looking at, or these graphs we're looking at here?
Yeah, so challenges for upgrading. There's one of the key points said was about the cost of integration, or funding the integration and the change of the systems. Everybody knows this is a challenge, but the main purpose of a agency is to provide a good and equitable system to their communities. So yeah, we have to find special ways or intelligent ways to help the agencies to go through this, but it has to happen, because at the end of the day, and if you think about the total cost of ownership, those outdated systems is actually costing more money than the upgrading.
Mm-hmm. And I think we talked about kind of the back end benefits a little bit, but when selecting hardware, do you think agencies give enough weight to the passenger experience at the validator, or is the focus kind of too heavily on back end benefits?
I'll give you 2 points of view. One from the agency and looking at the back end, the back office. Sure. The hardware should not limit the back office capabilities. It should actually enhance that capability. Matt just mentioned about all the possibilities, doing everything in one computer at the office, how fast it can be, all the technology that we have today. With a limited hardware, you're just limiting the whole system, right? So this is one way. So the hardware has to complement the back end. From the other side is from the customer side. The customer should not care about anything. Just walk in, tap, or just walk in and be as seamless as possible, and not even thinking that they are, paying for that system. So those are the 2 views I see.
Can I throw in something there as well? Just again, just
Absolutely,
the
Matt.
observation. You know, what customers and the equipment you have on the bus, that is the touch point for your customer. Okay.
Correct.
So if it doesn't work, I will instantly have the view of like, but the whole system doesn't work, right? Because this reader hasn't worked. So, yes, we can do things in the back end, but we can do that, asynchronously. We can do it a bit later if we need to. We can adjust. We can do all sorts of great things. But, that is your touch point. So getting it to perform at really high levels of availability and having suppliers who are saying, hey, I've invested in my reader. It's a damn good reader. It works in this environment, and I am prepared to go to 99 points, put the number in that you want to there. That is important. Again, it's what's the offer to the customer. So you're able to think, look, that is that touch point. Make it work first time, every time, and customers just go, this works great. Yes, there will always be the chance of some failure at some point. We know that, but really investing so that touch point just always works and builds the trust. Really important for the customers to build that trust in the equipment and the service that you're being offering.
Right. Great. I'm going to give the guys a second to kind of catch their breath here. To just remind you, if you have any questions or anything as we are going on here, feel free to type them in. We can get to them toward the end of the discussion. Fernando and Matt, thanks again for being a part of this webinar. I think this is some really good stuff for our listeners, our viewers. However, I trust those folks, people that are tuning in right now. Moving on to the next kind of topic here, the key priorities for agencies when upgrading. Fernando, can you talk a little bit about the kind of some of the benefits or some of the things here on this chart, and we could kind of talk about some of those priorities and challenges when we're looking at upgrading technology.
Sure. So the survey also showed us that kind of a result, right? So reducing the reliance on cash payments, we already discussed a lot about this. Enhancing ride experience, being a good system that works all the time, that is seamless to be used. Expanding contactless and mobile payment options, offering people more options to pay as they want, as they are used to. Collecting detailed ridership data, and I probably will be talking about a little more on the data, but the importance of collecting, which cash will not allow the agencies to collect those important information, and also one of the biggest topics from the agencies were reducing dependency on proprietary ticketing systems. Most of the time, the ticket systems are proprietary, and they have to go through the owner of that solution to have changes or have upgrades and add new technologies, which makes it difficult for them to implement sometimes. Simple things like I want to do a promotion during the weekend, go to the concert or the, any festivity, and Independence Day festivities, and use it's a free fare for those going on that direction. So having a system that is open as possible for the agencies to have that ownership is what makes the difference on that sense.
Yeah. I think we're getting really to the teeth of this subject, right? Can you guys talk a little bit about, why non-proprietary open ticketing solutions are critical for agencies today, and how do they future-proof long-term planning?
You go, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost why I'm in this job that I'm in, because I would love it not to be the case that procurements are difficult and expensive to set up because I have legacy systems and I have an incumbent supplier who's been here for 675 years. And, would you like to come and bid against the market? And they're like, a bit difficult. There are lots of examples around the world that is happening. Those that might follow things, I'm involved in one at the moment in London. And I think this issue to make sure that agencies are not having difficulty in procuring. That's the ultimate thing. I never like to see a procurement being a difficult project for an agency to run. It should be simple, okay? And I think there are a couple of ways here that are happening. I think the market is accepting this, and you're seeing quite a few players in the marketplace who are trying to offer sort of, here's a standardized service. I'm not going to build you something special. I can integrate with other members of the chain. I can do readers, I can do the back office, I can do the acquiring, I can do data analytics. Right. And they're starting to say, look, we've already built the integration up. So we can do that. We can offer different services. We can offer more than one service, but we can integrate with others seamlessly. So I think we're seeing the market go that way. Not all the market, but some of the market. I think the other side is on the agency side, is to sort of anticipate this and go, okay, what can I do, to promote this sort of model where it becomes an easy buy, where I'm not tied to one supplier, where I can, purchase readers from one company, one period, and then maybe have other readers because they've been offered at a cheaper price or because they're better. How do we structure that? And I think agencies just need to think this through. It's not an easy answer. It's never just a simple, I just got to ask the right thing. Make sure you consider it. How do you set the systems up to make sure longer term it's all sustainable? Because I just don't want us to waste our tax dollars either running procurements or trying to battle, how do I deal with the fact to have an incumbent who's in place and no one wants to bid against it? That's a bit of a waste. We want the market to work properly. I want to be able to buy those services wherever I want to buy them from and fit them together. So, it is a challenge at the moment, and it's not just simple, but you've got to always think about it, always plan for it. Maybe it happens in stages. Maybe we buy it all together this time, but at the end of the contract, it can split apart very easily. That's a sensible way of doing it, and those approaches just have to be thought through to anticipate for a long-term sort of commercially sustainable system.
And on the topic of procurement, Matt, are agencies increasingly specifying open architecture hardware in RFPs? And if so, what does that signal about kind of industry priorities?
Yeah, it's a great question, Alex. And I think, that is what's coming out. People are saying, open architecture. And I think what I'm finding is it's always good to sort of, okay, let's unpack that. This really has to work for, maybe your hardware supplier is different from your back-end supplier. Are you ready for that? Here's what you would have to do in that situation. Here's how you can help that situation come about. But everyone's getting that push from their boards that they're, the message out there of going, I don't want to give examples. There's some examples which is, look, we have to stay with the incumbent because there is no other option. And boards now are going, look, you've done this twice to us over the last 12 years, no more. And that shift is coming, and it's a global issue. It's a global thing that's coming to make sure that you are running a sort of a fair and competitive process. I think my only observation is at the point, plan it through, because it isn't necessarily easy. So don't just go, I've had a system in place with the same supplier for 30 years. I'll just go to the market and say, give it me all separately. It'll all just work. You might have to sit here and go, okay, I've got a compromise here and maybe help. And it might take 2 procurements to eventually get to the right place. It might take a period of 3 or 4 years or 5 years to get there. It's not all done in one jump. So that process of just planning out how to get there, I think, is where I'm finding where we add a lot of value, is trying to say to people, just plan it out, because you've really got to go along with the market and maybe take 2 or 3 steps to get there. Don't just go it in one place. But there is certainly the pressure and the requests to do an open system.
For me, the open system, it translates in the agencies and the integrators to have ownership of their operation.
Okay. And Fernando, what types of passenger and operational data can agencies capture through digital ticketing, and how can you use that data to improve service?
Initially, by using the digital solutions, it's collecting basically the boarding in, boarding out place and time. That allows people or the agencies to better assist or to better plan their timetables, where they should put more buses to assist the community, what the times they should be running more or less buses. And you have to be very careful on how to collect and what type of data is collected. But basically, collecting those information will allow a lot of planning.
And can I just add I had this thought earlier when I saw your slides come up, Fernando, that not only with the data collection, but these digital systems also allow you a chance to build a relationship with your customers. Okay.
Sure.
Now, some customers just want to tap on and tap off and don't come back. But some will want to use the app to plan their journey, or will want to check their account or print off a receipt for their expenses. And suddenly you now have an opportunity of having an interaction. Back to our earlier thing. Did you know that we do a discount to get to the game? I didn't know that. Oh, that's interesting. So I'm doing some cross-selling. Or did you realize we have reduced fares on the weekend for families? I didn't know that. Oh, well, that's fantastic. So again, through this digital experience, yes, you get the data, but you also get the chance to sort of create data relationships with customers and start to have those interactions. So I think that's another aspect here of both that planning side, but also having those interactions to really sort of market and engage better with the customers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting, and I mean, I love doing these webinars and doing giving information out to our readers and letting them kind of know kind of the cutting edge of things, and when in one of our informational calls we were talking about PCI, which I had no idea what that was. But Fernando, can you talk a little bit about PCI compliance and what exactly that is?
Sure, absolutely. So PCI is all about protecting the card and the card data, the card holder data. It works with the EMV system, the banking cards, right? Is the security protocol. There is a difference between, there's two types of, let's say, PCI certifications. One is the data security, which will apply to the agencies, which it basically is to prevent the agencies to see the real card holder data, name, expiration time, CVV number, and things like that. So they will get a encrypted message, and they use the encrypted message to get paid by the bank without knowing anything about the card holder. And then there is the PCI PTS, which is applied to the hardware. Then that's the importance to have it both, because then you are certifying that the data is being collected and sent it correctly to the agencies, and the agencies will pass that information to the banks to collect the payments without anybody seeing the card data. So that's the PCI part.
Interesting.
I hope I explained it correctly. It's not that simple.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Can I add on the PCI? PCI is an important one because, again, some people think it's a problem. I mean, dealing with security feels like it's a challenge, but all the technical stuff is always dealt with by suppliers. People like HID are experts in how to deal with this stuff. But what you as an agency end up doing is you're becoming a retailer, so there is a slight change in role. And I'll give one example where I was I think it was in California. The agency didn't have their own bank account because they'd never needed one before, because they'd used a centralized bank account, and they needed to do that because they're now a retailer and funds need to be paid into an account. And that's the thing, just to get your mind around, is not necessarily the complexity of the technical stuff, because there are experts out there who can deal with it. But you are becoming a merchant, you are selling something, you're a retailer, so sometimes you do have to make sure, am I compliant with the rules? Because every other retailer in the world that sells stuff and accepts cards has to say, yeah, I know I'm okay. I'm being secure. I'm following your guidelines. I've read them. I understand them. I'm doing them. I'm making sure my staff are trained, whatever else. So again, there are two bits here. There's the technical stuff that others can manage, and you as an agency, you're going to take on a couple of obligations, but they're more about being a retailer, just following the rules. There's simple things about retail that you have to do, and every other merchant does around the world. So that's the slight change that comes about, and it's not a problem. It's just to be aware of that you have to do.
And moving on, and before I do, again, I just want to implore you, if you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat. Even if we don't get to them today, our experts will get to them after the webinar today. Moving on, what are some of the most common integration challenges when introducing new fare collection hardware, and how can agencies mitigate those issues?
I would say probably the biggest issue is the interoperability of the systems and the hardware is the new with existing. Yeah, that's probably it. Matt might have more experience on
yeah,
that.
I mean, we talked earlier. Integration is a challenge, and with systems. I mean, the simple answer is motivate the market to solve the problem, right? So, if you're going out there, say to, I need you to demonstrate to me that you can work with at least 3 of these suppliers. That's the way you'll earn your money, or that's the way you'll earn your bonus money. And again, I think if I can just draw people's attention to, there's a project in California called CalITP, the California Integrated Transit Project. Great website, lots of stuff there, but they've tried to build this system where, look, we put it on the market to just say, you need to work it out. If you want business with us, you have to integrate. And they're able to do that. So again, think about some of your commercial approaches here, not the sort of challenge of like, okay, how do I as an agency take on the risk of making this reader talk to this back end, to this supplier? Try to structure it and push it on and say, you want business with me, you lot, go work it out, because you can do, you can do it, and get your commercial structures so they're incentivized to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, assuming that the people tuning in today are from North America, sometimes the best ideas come from looking outside your own backyard. And obviously, Matt, with your experience at TfL, are there international examples of innovation in fare collection that North American agencies could learn from and maybe even apply, to their operations?
Well, I think we've covered them, and in effect, be honest here, EMV, was the big shift. Okay, it was over 100 years ago that we got rid of, paying for cash. You had to exchange cash for tickets, right? That was a problem from over 100 years ago. And suddenly, only now in the last 10, 15 years, have we managed to get rid of that. And it is as easy as paying a coffee or, buying a pizza. That is the big shift, okay? So making sure that you can do that, offer that to your customers, that's the real innovation I see. Coupled with the phone. Everyone knows the phone, whether it's a mobile wallet that's got my bank card in there to do it, or it is with barcode, which we're getting used to. Those are the innovations. And what it would take for the lessons is people have installed this, suppliers have done it before, listen to what they have to say. That path is now well trodden. And there are people who understand how to implement it seamlessly, help you with issues about PCR, which sound confusing. How do I make people, in trouble? In effect, those are the big innovations, and they are huge. I look back at the history, and this is game-changing moments that are happening. And the secret is to now get it in, and then see what comes. Because the real innovation is when you find, business travelers start using public transport, because it's so easy to use. I get all the data. It's quicker than this. I'll go for it. Or families start using the service because it's so easy to use. It's so understandable. I was marketed to easily. I just do it on my phone. The innovation is going to come in the product that we can offer, but let's get this baseline in place.
Yeah, I would like to add 2 things. I think Europe and obviously Latin America and Africa, they have much more experience, both by the size and the mobility issues, and also by necessity than America, because there's less people that has access to a car, and they have to move the population. So there is plenty of examples on those markets that could be copied or use it as a base for North America. We have a white page on Metro Magazine about the experience that we had in Stockholm by using the new system. They had a fare evasion reduction from 3.1 to 3.3%, and they had boosted their ferry validations in the 58-60% to almost 90%. So those are a few examples if you want to see that. It's a white page on the Metro magazine.
Yep. Just a reminder, metro-magazine.com. That has also been in some of our newsletters as of late. What advice would you give agencies on balancing costs, vendor lock-in, and long-term flexibility when procuring new hardware?
Matt?
Yeah, so I'm trying to give an honest answer here, which is, for some agencies, when you're starting out, you probably do just want one person to get you started on this journey. If you're still collecting cash, that might be the right answer. Okay, but the future is going to be having that flexibility of the open architecture. Again, it's this issue of the key thing is to get that step going and make the change so your customers have a different experience. And every agency is different. Some agencies have a more mature, have a large organization. Some agencies I meet are sort of 15 people, and they say, Matthew, it's very good what you're saying to us, but I just don't have the people to manage this. I need something that's very easy to manage. So you can recognize where you are as an agency and really think that through. What's the right model for you? But whatever you do, always write into your contracts the ability to use open interfaces, to use other third parties. Only little changes like that will set you up for the future. But again, I think with agencies, if you can fully open up and make these investments, go for it. But I always recognize, it's a challenging world out there. And if you have to go a different route, go a different route. But just let's try and improve that experience for the customer and really make public transit sort of more and more appealing.
Right. And we have a few more minutes. So just two quick last questions. Looking ahead, how do you see fare collection technology evolving over the next 5 years? And what's kind of the longer term vision, beyond that?
I see the fare collection being in the future being more diverse and inclusive. And by diverse, I mean the sense of allowing everyone to use the way that they prefer to pay with all those technologies. People like to pay with the phone, they pay with phone or card or whatever method. And inclusive by using those technologies to include people to the system in a way to make it more equitable. People that doesn't have the money to put like a big amount at the beginning of the month, but they can cash in every day or every 2-3 days. By having an account, they will get the privilege of the fare capping and the promotions that today they don't have by using cash. So that's the part of the inclusion that I believe. And then fare collection definitely should contribute to improve the ridership and making a more efficient moving people around the cities.
And so for me, I think I mentioned it's the products. Okay, I think EMV is the way people pay at the moment. As long as it's or mobile will be the way people are used to paying. The real innovation is going to be the products that are created when the partnerships are formed with, we talked about it, with events, with employers, using digital platforms. It just allows us to do so much more as individual marketing to individual customers or groups. It can open up those products that make it more attractive, and we can just keep chipping away and keep growing our market share off this base platform as those products can really hit what the customers want and entice them onto public transport.
Great. And, I think maybe the last thing, and I think, we can talk on and on, I think, about this. I think, we're talking about cyber issues and that sort of thing, which have been an issue here in the States and outside, outside of North America as well. So, thanks for the time and everything, guys. I think the last question that we got from the audience was, can we get a copy of this report that was referenced during our webinar? Fernando, is this available for people to take a look at?
Yeah, definitely. If you access the Metro Magazine site where we're talking about this webinar, there is a link to our page. We will show both the Stockholm case that I mentioned, but also there is a link for the report.
Fantastic. Thanks again for your time, you guys. That's all the time we have. I want to again thank Fernando and Matt for their time. Thank you for joining us. And a reminder, if you want to listen to this on demand, it'll be available on our website. That is www.metro-magazine.com. Thanks again for joining us, and thanks for your time. We hope to see you again soon, and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.